When we drop one of our pods, it's basically after install, all the fibers connected, you're right around $1 million. You can justify the expense and the revenue by deploying these, and the savings to the customer out there justifies the colo because they're paying the same price or cheaper because the connectivity is cheaper than they would in a major data center in a tier one market.
Hello and welcome to Cool Vector. I'm David Snow, your host, and today we're joined by Doug Recker, president and founder of Duos Edge AI, and Adrian Goldfarb, CFO of Duos Technologies Group, of which Duos Edge AI is a subsidiary, and we're going to learn all about edge data centers, a very exciting technology that is playing an important role in the build-out of digital infrastructure around the world. Doug and Adrian, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Doug, can you make the case for why the world needs edge data centers?
Oh, perfect. Yes, absolutely. Let me give you an example of what the use case is. So our first pod that we dropped in Amarillo, Texas for Region 16. So Region 16 has around 52 schools that they maintain. They provide connectivity, managed services for all the schools, the curriculum, all that database, everything. So the issues they were having is each school in these remote tier 3, tier 4 markets, the school goes back to a major hub, right, for their IP. So in these cases, these remote schools have a terrible connection back to their hub because they're out in the middle of nowhere. And then it's very costly. Some of them go 500 miles to Dallas, right? So those circuits are long, expensive, and they have latency, obviously, right? So what we do with our product, we drop it in the market. So it's a mini data center, about 15 cabinets, 200 kW in power. And what we do is we rent the cabinets to the region center, and then they have connectivity back to the pod, which, the furthest school away is like 12 miles. So what that does is it eliminates the latency, helps with that, gives them more robust networks, and also the redundancy. Because when we drop the pod there, it's like a tier 3 data center. Everything's backed up. There's 2 generators, 2 UPSs, all the way in to the PDU level. There's an A and B. So it's like they are basically in a major market and co-locating. So now their bandwidth is cheaper going back to the hub, and they have a choice because inside of our pod, we have multiple carriers. It basically brings competition to that market. And then also we provide in that market, say again, Amarillo, all the hospitals, healthcare, remote learning, all that now has a robust hub in that market. So that's really the goal with our product, is to bring more robust, redundant networks out to where they currently aren't today.
What is the price differential between, dropping one of your edge data centers in a place near Amarillo, Texas, and waiting for a full-scale data center to be built out? I mean, there's a time and an expense differential that's important, right?
Our Amarillo can't justify a $30 or $50 million data center. They don't have enough revenue to support that facility being there, but they do have core revenue in there from the hospitals, logistics, and the school system to justify putting one or multiple pods. So when we drop one of our pods, it's basically after install, all the fibers connected, you're right around $1 million. So you can justify the expense and the revenue by deploying these, and the savings to the customer out there justifies the colo. They're paying the same price or cheaper because the connectivity is cheaper than they would in a major data center in a tier 1 market.
Adrian, as CFO of Duos Technologies Group, can you give us the quick overview of how it is that Duos Technologies Group decided to get into the edge data center business?
Duos Technologies was in what we call the intelligent technologies. They had a technology they were just bringing to forward to evaluate moving vehicles. And in this case, it was trains. It turns out that the Railcar Inspection Portal, which is this very sophisticated, very expensive scanner that basically looks at vehicles that can be moving up to 125 miles an hour, there's a lot of processing that's involved in that. And it just simply wasn't possible to process that much data by backhauling it over the cloud. We looked at the assets that we had, and one of them was this edge data center that was attached to our Railcar Inspection Portal. And we said, well, why don't we just market those as a local data processing? In July, we decided to enter that market. Doug was interested to join up with us, having sold his previous company. And so consequently, we took a technology that we were very familiar with, and we took someone who's an expert in that field, married it up, and it's kind of a marriage made in heaven.
Excellent. Just very briefly, why would you scan a rail car?
That's a very good question. So the Federal Rail Administration has certain rules, around 90 different safety points that are on a rail car that need to be looked at. So up until not that long ago, they did this manually. And so we came up with this technology that said instead of spending several hours with personnel walking the train, you just run it through this scanner, and in a minute or less, you've got a complete idea of, 95% or more of the defects that might be on the train. And
Doug, can you just describe one of these edge data centers?
The data center is basically 55-foot long and it's about 12.5-foot wide. So it fits perfectly on a lowboy truck. So they're made at a factory in Colorado, and basically everything is done inside the pod. So the cabinets, the main switch gear, your cooling system, fire suppression. So that process takes about 3 months from start to finish because there's steel frame, steel structure. So when that product is delivered to the site, we have the concrete pad poured and then the concrete pads for the two generators. So they arrive at the same time. We drop the pod down, we drop the generators. We do a little bit of site work so we can have the conduit tied into everything, and then the fiber conduit's done. And then the utility is usually waiting for us. So we usually have a transformer sitting there. The size of these pods range from 125 kW, and they can go up to 2 megawatt if you want them to. We can transition to higher loads if we need to. We can actually grow with the customer. You put one down and you put another one down next to it if the growth is there. Prime example, this one that we dropped in Amarillo, now the other school districts are calling about it, and then the local county is interested. So we would probably put another one next to it for county, municipality, fire, police, all that. Once you get the process down, we should be able to have these on the ground in under 4 months.
Well, we're aware that out there in regular data center land, people are waiting 5 years to get a transformer. So I'd say 4 months is a pretty good improvement over that. Give us a quick overview of how these things are powered. You just plug them into the grid, or do they need sort of an independent source of energy?
The big data centers are having issues, right? Getting 10, 20, 30 megawatt. Well, our sweet spot is under 2 meg. So you can get 2 meg rather easily. When we do research before we land a pod, we find out what the best location is to put the pod where the fiber is existing and where there's power available. This is all coming through utility. So the utility feeds into the ATS and then the generators and then the pods. It's quite simple. So you run all that in parallel, and that's how you can meet that 4-month window.
Adrian, maybe you can just walk us briefly through the business plan for these data centers.
what we're in effect is almost like the apartment business. You build a set of apartments. In this case, it's an edge data center that has typically 15 cabinets. You put that on a piece of land, and it's in effect like an apartment is equipped before you move in. So it has the kitchen and the bathroom and the hard fittings. It doesn't have any furniture or TVs or anything in it. We then put that down. We say you can lease that. You, the customer, bring that equipment in. So what you've got is you've got a long-term contract on something that's providing you lots of free cash flow, which of course, the people that I deal with at Wall Street, they love that. They love that business model. Completely the opposite from where we used to be with heavy CapEx sales. It costs us about $1 million to put one of these on the ground. The expected revenue from that is somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 per year, which means the return on it is anywhere between 2.5 and 4 years, which is a very good return cycle and something that's depreciating very slowly. Doug introduced me to the concept of cross connects. I love cross connects. That's another additional source of revenue when we connect our people that are within the pod.
And they also have a choice. So they can go directly to the carrier and buy their internet directly from the carrier. They can buy a blended product from us. So they have options. We don't care who they buy their connectivity from. We cross connect them to their networks.
Let's talk about the partnership with Fortress Investment Group. Can you give us the details of that and sort of what it means for your ability to expand with the demand that you're facing?
Our CEO used to run a company called APR Energy, and they had basically 30 gas turbines. I think it was always his dream to be able to acquire those. Duos Technologies is too small to be able to do that. It would have been incredibly diluted for us to raise that kind of money. Through a bank, we were introduced to Fortress Investment Group. They, in effect, acquired the assets. They gave us a 5% interest in that. And then they also gave us an asset management agreement whereby we now, in effect, operate and manage all of those assets because we have all the experience and we have all the people And so that's how it's been structured. The expectation is that will last about 2 years. It's an incredibly efficient way to start up a new business. We announced a project back in December that actually comes directly from Doug's connections, which will be likely a joint project between APR and Duos, which will build out a massive facility, orders of magnitude bigger than we are. And so that's the benefit of that structured arrangement.
Can you talk about whether the demand that you are enjoying is creating any what you might call high-class problems where you're scrambling to keep up with this demand? What does the order book look like? Just give us a sense of sort of what the interest is out there.
So now that we've done the first, basically POC with the first school district, we plan on dropping 6 more school districts by the end of second quarter. So we're moving very quickly on those. I need us to build 15 more this year. So that'll be this year, and then it'll double for next year. But getting the first one in, showing that what it does for the school system was the best way to do it. Now we're there. So now it's really picking up speed.
All of a sudden now, we have more demand than we really know what to do with.
Without asking you to gaze too deeply into a crystal ball, I mean, think about 5, 10 years out. Do you see this business having assets just all over North America, possibly beyond that? What's the ultimate vision?
What we're seeing now is people calling us big hyperscalers, which is interesting, to put little pods out in regions. Instead of going for 30, 50 meg sites, 2 meg sites are starting to look attractive to them, and they put them all around. And I'm sure you're going to see probably, 3 to 4 or 5 more of us by the end of this year, because there's a need for them. So there's plenty of room out there for all of us. AWS is already doing it. So you're going to see Kroger and Publix and all the other folks doing it because it just makes sense.
You have been in the data center world for, I guess, more than 30 years. As you look at the opportunity before you today, what is exciting to you? What do you find to be notable that perhaps is different than what you saw during your first 30 years in the business?
I can just go back to 7 years ago when I deployed my first pod with American Tower. So just the difference between now and back then is crazy. So the amount of power that goes in the pod and then what people are using the pods for. Before it was kind of like, I really don't need the connectivity. I've got, DSL or whatever at my home. It's fine. And the schools are fine. Well, now you add all this data, right? And all this downstreaming and connectivity and live streaming for hospitals that they're doing with another hospital across the country. So now the need is there. The technology is there. It's been tested and they're doing it. So now the need is there. So it's not like we're trying to invent a product now. We're trying to fix a need, which is always better to be on that side, right? Than build it and hope they'll come. I always knew it was going to hit, right? So we're just getting through. And just like the previous company we sold, they're doing very well. The same things. It's now taking off. So now's the prime time. The need is there.
Do you guys look at a map and kind of find the least populated parts of the country and kind of feel excited to see, to see remote population centers because those are your next customers?
Yeah, if you can see my wall, you'll see a big picture, a big map of the state of Texas. Texas right now is our focus because we're new, right? So we want to focus on Texas, conquer Texas right now, and then we'll move throughout and do multiple states at once. But I think it's the smartest move is we go into an area like, state like Texas, show them how the schools can benefit from getting grants for using these. It helps the schools out. And then we help them with their E-rate and everything else. It's just a perfect mix. And then we've proven it out with the state. Then we can go to other state entities and pitch it to the state where they help the schools bring this product in. I think that's the key. I just gave the secret sauce out.
So in Texas, not everything is big.
Yeah,
there's a need for small.
That's right. We're trying to get it there. I think the feedback from our, Region 16, their head of IT, he's so excited about it. And this is like big for them to have their own data center, right? You couldn't imagine that 10 years ago, having my own data center in the backyard that services all my locations. So I think you're going to see a lot of that more, not just with school systems though, either. People are bringing the cloud back in. People are managing their own networks again. And this is a must to have. So I think we're in the sweet spot right now, and it's going to do nothing but grow. And then we'll find new case studies as we go. Because every day I come into the office and there's something new that they want to use a pod for. And just let me give you one example, which totally threw us off, which I think is interesting. So out in Amarillo, they're big cattle farmers, right? So they're now going to drones and AI to manage their cattle. They can't do all this data and recovery in AI without having compute on site. So where the pod is in Amarillo is only 6 miles away from the ranches. Now they can co-locate and do their AI there. I would have never guessed that in a million years. I would have put a pod out in a rural area that cattle farmers and dairy farmers have a need for this.
So you guys are basically high-tech cowboys. That's
There we go.
where-
That's
where
why.
we
That's
are.
why every time I give a speech, I have a cowboy hat on. So I love Texas. Even though I live in Jacksonville, Florida, I love Texas.
I hope we
Thank
can
you.
have you back to talk more about edge data centers as they continue to gain traction. And thanks so much for sharing your perspective with Cool Vector.
Thanks for having us. Really, this was great.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
spending
much.
time with us. Very good questions.